Hi, my name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing some more gaslighting phrases that maybe you may not have realized were gaslighting phrases, and also kind of how to decode them as well. So the purpose of this video, if you have, well, first of all, if you're not familiar with what gaslighting is, I have several videos on the topic. If you just go to the channel and you look on the playlist, you'll see a playlist a lot about gaslighting. So I encourage you to watch those videos so you can understand more about what gaslighting is. But if we were to, really distill it and get down to the essence of what gaslighting is, it's getting the person, the gaslighter is wanting the person who's on the receiving end to doubt the reality and doubt their ability to discern reality properly. And so that's why people who've been gaslit often will say that they feel like they're crazy when they are talking to somebody who's gaslighting them, and they start to doubt if they're even in touch with reality. And so that's in essence what gaslighting is. It's also important to remember that people who gaslight are very, very, very invested in a particular image that they have of themselves, right? And so for them, they cannot, I wouldn't say they cannot, I will say that they refuse to come to terms with a criticism leveled against them, or basically anything that kind of defies an image that they have of themselves. They will do anything and everything not to face it in that moment. And so that's often why I tell people that you can only do so much when you are being gaslit by somebody. I also have a video on the Jade method to combat gaslighting, and I encourage you to watch that video as well. So on to gaslighting phrases. One phrase that is common amongst people who gaslight is they'll say things like, well, you don't know my heart, right? We hear this a lot, particularly in, I would say, spiritual religious settings. But when someone says, you don't know my heart, it has maybe it has a kernel of truth to it. And that's also something to remember, is that when people gaslight others, what they say more often than not tends to have an element of truth. And that's why it can be very difficult to decipher gaslighting, because someone could say, yeah, I don't know, I don't know your heart. And so it's important that you understand that we can't look at gaslighting from a place of whether the statement is true or not. It's more about the function of that statement. And so when someone says, you don't know my heart, it's often in response to something that that person did that either you didn't agree with or you felt hurt by it, right? When people who gaslight have a very difficult time accepting the fact that they've done something to hurt somebody else, or somebody else felt hurt by their actions. And so they will say things like, well, you don't know my heart. And what that message is actually communicating is that my intentions are all that matters, right? And so because I have good intentions, then you should not get upset about getting hurt by what happened. And that happens quite a bit. You'll often hear me say this on this channel, that intent doesn't remove or erase the implications of something. Somebody who I've collaborated with before, Kyle Spears, he owns Truth Trauma Theology channel, and he says this perfectly. He said, intent does not sanitize the implications of what happened, right? Meaning that someone could have good intent, but that doesn't mean that what happened is just, we just throw it away, or we just act like it's not that big a deal. But people who gaslight want you to think that, and they want you to just ignore the outcome of their actions because they supposedly had good intentions. And to me, intentions are less important than the outcome, right? People often, I think, have mixed intentions when they do something. Some of it may be for good reasons, and then maybe some are also selfish or whatnot. And so when someone says, you don't know my heart, they're basically saying, don't pay attention to what I did, and I want you to put your faith in something that you can't prove, right? Because someone could always say, oh, I didn't mean to do this. And maybe they didn't mean to do it, and that can be part of the conversation. But the most important thing is, like, what did this cause, right? And somebody, if we contrast a somebody who gaslights with somebody who takes responsibility and has good ownership over their actions, they would first focus on what happened. And they would say, no, I'm sorry that that you were hurt by what I did, or just take ownership in some way and say, I understand. They try to understand the perspective of the person who's bringing up the complaint. It wasn't my, even though it wasn't my intention to hurt you, I can see that what I did cause some damage, and take ownership of that. So it's important, sometimes when we wonder about gaslighting and start to doubt ourselves, think about how an emotionally healthy and mature person would respond. So the "you don't know my heart" is a big one. Another one that you'll hear again in particularly religious or spiritual situations is, well, only God knows my heart. You hear this a lot. God knows my heart. God knows my heart. And it's true that God knows your heart, but at the end of the day, you're still responsible for what you've done. When people often like to focus on their intentions, I use this example, and I've used this before on my channel, about somebody who drives into who causes an accident, right? So maybe someone's driving and they cause an accident and they cause you bodily injury, and now you have to have all these expenses and possibly replace your car. Right now, in a situation like this, the person who hit your car may have done so in a situation where it was not in their control. So maybe they had like a bad reaction to a particular medicine, or they had a seizure and it was the first time, but they didn't know what was going on. Yeah, then it's not necessarily their fault, right? But at the same time, that doesn't erase the pain, the physical pain that you're feeling, nor does it erase the financial responsibilities that you do have. And so it's really important to think about it from that perspective, that regardless of the person's intentions, there still is a real mess that we have to deal with. And when people who gaslight say things like, well, only God knows my heart, yeah, it's true that, God knows your heart, but at the same time, there are real consequences to your actions. And when people who gaslight really want to avoid that as much as possible. Another thing that you might hear in a situation like this is, you might hear like a sarcastic question like, wow, who hurt you? And again, what that is saying is that you're too sensitive. You're reacting to something that's not real and has nothing to do with me. Remember, I said before that people who gaslight are very much invested in a self-image that they have, right? So for them, they want to deflect that blame and responsibility as much as they can. By the way, if you are enjoying what you are watching, you feel it's beneficial, please take a moment to like the video, to subscribe if you haven't already, and also to share it with other people. That would really help a lot. And so if you want to do so, please go ahead and do that. All right. So, I've reviewed about 3 phrases. Just need to look here at my notes real quick. But the first one is, you don't know my heart, God knows my heart. And, who hurt you, kind of in a sarcastic way. And then sometimes something that you will see that happens when someone is gaslighting you is that they will say, remember, their focus is, off of their responsibility. And so they might say something like, you know what, you're right, it's all my fault and I'm the worst person ever. So you can just substitute person with title, right? It could be, I'm the worst, whatever it is, worst pastor, worst wife, worst husband, whatever it is. They will say, you know what, I'm the worst ever. And when they say that, they're saying that because they want you to jump in and say, oh, no, that wasn't what I was saying. You're not the worst person in the world. And, we all make mistakes, and basically come in to make them feel better about what they did to you, which is actually, when you think about it, it's actually quite ridiculous, right? And a lot of times people who gaslight also, they play the victim quite often. So this is a way of just victimizing themselves, because you didn't say you're the worst person ever or whatever, but when they say that, it's like, okay, feel sorry for me and make me feel better and things like that. So that's something, that's a maneuver that you will see is, hey, that make this about me, and yes, I'm the worst person ever. And then another thing that you'll also hear too, which is along those lines, is like, hey, you know what? If I could stop, don't you think I would stop if I could? Right. And so you'll often hear this with people who are abusive. And when they're like caught, red-handed, there's no evidence to deny, no evidence to like fit into their delusion. Then they'll say something like, well, if I could change, I would. And I'm trying my best and I'm trying my hardest. And if I could change, I would. And so again, it's taking the heat off of them and making you the person who is putting unreasonable demands on them. Right. And so they're saying that, well, if I could change, I would. Don't you know that I'm trying my best? And again, all these things have an element of truth in them. Yeah, the person could be trying their best, and in this situation, their best is still hurting you and it's not enough. And so those things, both things can be true. But again, somebody who's emotionally mature, somebody who is caring about you and is invested in the dynamic of the relationship you have would take ownership and they would make it about themselves. And I'm not saying that when you're in a relationship with someone that it all has to be one-sided, always has to be about you, the person who's bringing things up. It goes both ways, right? And so both people in a healthy relationship are taking responsibility for their own actions and things like that. So that's an important thing to realize when you're in these situations, right? And so I'm going to go over the phrases again in case you might have missed them. The first one is, you don't know my heart. The second one is only God knows my heart, right? And then the third one is saying something like, well, gosh, who hurt you? And then the fourth thing is going to extremes, right? So saying, you're right, I'm the worst person ever. And the last one is saying, well, don't you know if I could change, I would. And all these things, what they have in common is the person who is doing the gaslighting is trying to take the heat off of themselves. They will do that whatever it takes. And it is designed to make you feel like what you're seeing isn't real, right? Like, this person just did this or said something awful, and yet I am the bad person here for noticing it. And so gaslighting is erosive. Sometimes when people think about this, they might have said, oh yeah, I might have said that in an argument with someone, and you might have said those things yourself at times, but that's different from gaslighting. Gaslighting is something that happens continuously over time. It's meant to wear down that person and break down that person, so the gaslighter ends up having control. So I hope this information is helpful for you. If you would like more information, or you'd like to book a session with me or a free consultation, you can go to skillsetcounseling.com, which is my website. Click on the orange button, or you can also click on the link on the description box to do that. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you heard similar phrases like that, and how do you respond and how do you deal with that? I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, have a great day, and I hope it is filled with peace and joy. Bye-bye.